joys and challenges. Kerry Tolson had slightly more of the latter when she went to Nepal on a whim, mind you, nothing booked or planned, and she took with her her husband, who is a reluctant traveller at the best of times. But it was while Kerry was writing her travel memoir she began questioning what rights she had to write about her family in her story. The book was published in the end. It's called Buddhas, Bombs and the Babu. It is her first and it will be part of the Broome Writers Festival this weekend. Hello, Kerry.
Hello, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm great. Let's begin with Nepal and your memories of those first few days of being there. What was it like?
Oh, a bit like being thrown in on a roller coaster that had no end. It's an incredibly vibrant, eclectic sort of place that nothing works and everything flows.
And what do you remember enjoying about your sudden immersion into Nepal?
Oh, I think it's being alive. It's like they throw you into it, and you run with it, and you feel this intense feeling of life and being there, being in the moment. It's none of this planning or anything like that. It's happening right this moment, and you just go with it, and you feel alive. You feel an incredible life.
Now, were you happy with the fact that you went there on a whim, didn't have too much booked at all? And how did that compare to your husband and son's approach to holidays, Kerry?
Okay, first of all, not too much booked, nothing booked. We arrived at the airport. We had an air ticket in. We arrived, we had 30 days and absolutely not a single plan, and it wasn't until I was on the plane that I actually opened a guidebook. There wasn't a lot about Nepal that I knew, other than it had a really big mountain that I didn't want to climb, had lots of temples that I wanted to visit, and had two very reluctant people with me who didn't want to visit.
This is a recipe for disaster, Kerry.
And we turned up, and we had no idea, even in Kathmandu, where we were going to go first. I knew there was this amazing place called the Kathmandu Guest House that I'd read that was the ending or the beginning of the 1960s, 70s hippie trail, and I thought that's where we're going to start. So we went there first and just went from there. We didn't even have our first night's accommodation booked. Nothing, just nothing. And our son was 11, and it was technically, I call it our very first trip overseas. We had done a very small stint in Bali, which was from where I come from, which is on the east coast near Byron. It was not much different from that, lots of shopping, massages, surfers, really quick and easy, quick and in and out. And that was actually to get my husband to agree to travel overseas. He actually didn't want to travel anywhere. He is a comfort zone hugger, workaholic. So even getting him to take some time off was a feat in itself.
I can't believe that you managed to convince him to come to Nepal and you didn't have your first night's accommodation booked. I would even put my foot down at that.
I know. Well, he had to agree, sort of thing. It was getting to the stage where it was packing boxes next to the front door, not the backpacks. I was so desperate to travel. I was in my mid-30s, on the other side of mid-30 by the stage, and I had a virginal passport in its second edition about to expire. That's how desperate I was to travel, and we had a business, and my husband, we were putting everything into the business, and he was like, I can't afford time away, and I felt like I was dying at home, and this 11-year-old was also being disconnected by not seeing his dad a lot because he was working such long hours, and I knew we had to do something to save ourselves, and Nepal saved us. And, that sounds so cliched, but Nepal has such an impact on people that you either embrace it and look at things so much differently because of how it is over there, or you just go, I'm never going anywhere near this sort of place again, whether it be Nepal or any other developing country. But, for me and for Mal now, he's not so much a comfort zone hugger, gripper, as a comfort zone cuddler. He's happy to wander away a few times now.
I think that could be classified as a victory there, Kerry.
Oh, definitely.
So as you were writing Buddhas, Bombs and the Babu, or the book that was to become this published work, where did you strike the moral question, hang on, I'm writing about stuff that's happening to my husband and my son. Am I breaching their privacy? When did that strike you?
When I was ironing underpants.
Okay.
I had got to the stage. When I first started writing the book, it was just going to be we went here, we did this, we saw that, and we lost you here, there sort of stuff with my son, just to give him an idea of what happened when he was 11, you know. So it wasn't going to be much. And then I thought, there's not a lot of books out there about, you know, kids travelling through Nepal. And I thought, you know, so much stuff happened to us and just really crazy stuff. I'm surprised we actually survived sometimes. You know, we weren't there trying to save the world, but trying to, you know, weren't even able to save ourselves half the time from ourselves. But I needed to put more into the book, the backstory, the essence of who we were. And at first you sort of think, I'll just write everything and put it down. And then I got to a part where I needed to really look at who we were and why we did what we did. And I was actually sort of procrastinating. And I thought, why am I doing this? And I had taken to ironing underpants. I was that nervous about writing stuff, and I couldn't work out what I was doing. And it was while I was doing the ironing, and I realised I was putting our laundry out there, our small, you know, the saggy ones, the holy ones, and you know. And I thought, I'm writing about my marriage. And then I thought, because you know, my son was 11 at the time, and he was, you know, he thought he had a nice, happy family life, and I thought, where do I tell the world that his parents were at breaking point? And how much of that privacy is my privacy that I'm happy to give away, but it's his privacy and I have no right to give away, you know. And the other thing was, we owned a very well, and still do, own a really well-known business in a small regional town. It's one thing to tell your girlfriend over a glass of wine, you know, my husband's driving me nuts. It's another thing for the Chamber of Commerce and your butcher to know. And I said, I don't really want my clients to know this. Do I know the guy, you know? And the other thing was, you know, how much does your mum need to know about your... Well, your mum knows just about everything about your life, but does your cousin really need to know everything? Does your sister need to know how things are so wonderful in your
particularly,
life?
as you mentioned it, you know, this is your son's life, and
Yes.
you were opening him up to privacy issues, to concerns, to ridicule, whatever it might be. So you've got this moral dilemma. Did you find then that you started editing, censoring even?
Totally. You self-edit, and to the extent that you almost freeze. And then and a few writer friends and other friends that knew I was writing this, they said, why don't you just write it under another name? And I thought about it, and the thing is, when you're writing memoir, you need to be honest to your story and honest to yourself. Because if you're going to write something that's not true or is sort of around a bit and then want to call it memoir, you're being disrespectful to the reader as well. And I thought to myself, I want this story for Sebastian, our son. And it is a funny story, and it's quite humorous and one of those, did they really do that sort of stories? But I wanted to be true to it, and I wanted to honour Nepal and the people there. They are so incredible, and I really didn't feel that it would honour the whole story and the whole feeling of what happens in Nepal if I did it under a pseudonym. And the other thing is, when you write a book, it doesn't stop at the end of the book cover and a barcode. You have to actually, your publisher gets it into the shops for you, but you actually have to go out there and do talks on it. So people would have found out who I was. It would have come up. The other dilemma I had, we don't know who our children will be when they grow up. They could be leading business people, politicians, celebrities. Our children could be the next Princess Mary or Kate Middleton. And if, as parents, we put their whole life out there while they're children, we could be, this is what I was thinking, I could be ruining his chances in life.
Oh my gosh, Kerry. I can see the moral dilemma you were coming up with as you ironed the underpants there.
I know. We we live in an era now where everything goes on Facebook, including, remember when holiday snaps were of temples and mountains and now it's everybody's meal? We're putting everything out there, but how much are we really putting out there, and how much of our children's lives and their rights to those privacy, of those family secrets or family private parts, the marriages, and because Sebastian and his dad Mal, my husband, were going through this disconnection, does everyone, all his mates need to know that? But that was a very important, integral part of the story. And he was 11, and as I was writing it, he was a teenager. So how's a hormonal teenager going to feel at the time, having all his mates know about his dad and him? It was all this sort of stuff coming up. So I thought, I'll wait until he's a bit older and I'll write this when he becomes an adult, Oh, well, of course, I then think to myself, what's his future wife going to think? Is she going to let me near the children after she finds out what I've done when he was in Nepal? Look, it's not the sort of dilemmas. My story isn't a very emotional in the sense that there was a lot of trauma. There's no trauma in that sense. But there is a lot of soul-searching of who you are, what your relationships are, and all that sort of stuff.
And you know what? It makes you human, and people can identify often with those very human, honest things. And you might leave out some of the really dirty laundry, but ultimately you're human, and we're all complex and we're all emotional, and there's some crazy stuff that goes on.
That's exactly right. And I had to keep telling myself that we're all human. This is just one story, and people will connect with it. And since it's come out, and a lot of people I know have read it, they have actually, especially a lot of women have come to me, and some men, I have to admit, have come to me and said, oh my goodness, you describe exactly how I feel with my desire to travel or my desire to do something, and my partner not having that need to. And they said, I felt your need, and some of them have said, you've actually said stuff that were happening in your marriage that happened in mine, and sort of made me wonder, does this happen to other people? Yes, it happens to us all.
Kerry, it's so great to talk with you, and I know it's going to be a really interesting discussion this Saturday, 1:00 at the Broome Library as part of the Writers Festival. Have a lot of fun, and if your son does become the next Princess Mary, I know you'll write about it.
No, he's not going to be the next Princess Mary. He is appearing in my next book too. Along with my daughter-in-law.
Oh, gosh.
That's going to be a hand grenade with the pin pulled out, and we're going to hang on tight.
A slippery slope. Kerry Tolson there, the author of Buddhas, Bombs and the Babu. You can hear Kerry in conversation this Saturday, 1:00 at the Broome Library. It's part of the Writers Festival. There are oodles of events right from Friday through till Sunday. Get yourself a program, pop in to, say, the Broome Library, for example, and pick up a program, or go online, do a quick search for Corrugated Lines, either in your search engine or on Facebook. Kerry's book, Buddhas, Bombs and the Babu. Look out for that sequel, the one featuring the daughter-in-law.